Okay, so what is the best way to build KO knockout punching power? Well, it's multifactorial. There's a lot of variables involved, such as muscle fibre types, technique. There's a lot that goes into it, but from a training perspective, if we want to maximise our punching power, here's the kind of things that I would say are your go-to exercises and movements. So to start, I would say the best thing you can do are the Olympic lifts. If you are comfortable and capable to do Olympic lifting, your clean and jerk and your snatch, they are some of the best exercises you can do for energy transference, power, rate of force development, and just building the complete capacity to transfer energy and force from the ground through the kinetic chain and up above the head. If, however, you're not capable and not an advanced lifter, then you're going to find the movements particularly tricky and you're probably going to be quite vulnerable to injury. Not to worry though, because there are other exercises that we can do that strip things like the Olympic lifting exercises down. So if we're not doing Olympic lifting, what I would say is get some deadlifts in. Deadlifts are a great exercise for exerting force through the ground, through the feet, into the floor, and to create hip drive and hip extension. This is important because when we're throwing a punch, you'll notice a lot of the force is generated from the hips. So if we can do a deadlift and we can do it under a heavy load, we're going to be exerting a lot of force and we're going to be driving that force through the floor using the hips. So that will be a staple for building force and power development around the hips. After that, I would say we need some core work, so some rotational work and anti-rotational work. There's a term, I believe it was by Yaz Parr, that said proximal stiffness allows for distal power. So under that concept, if we build a strong core, we'll have power in our punches. So core work is a must as well. Another key exercise that I'd put in is push press. Now, I'm not talking about a shoulder press where we take the bar and push it overhead. I'm talking about a push press where we're in a front rack position and we dip at the knees and then we drive the bar overhead, locking out above head with our shoulders completely extended overhead. And the reason that you do this as opposed to a shoulder press movement where you're pushing the weight up is because when we land in a punch, we're not getting to there and then pushing someone, are we? We want impact upon extension. So what we're doing there is we're actually driving through the ground up, putting that force through the floor and then using our entire kinetic chain before extending overhead, and we're going to have that stability overhead, so stability through the shoulder girdle. Now when we're in that overhead position, we've got load on pretty much every joint, okay? Wrist, elbow, shoulder. Our core is going to be nice and tight, creating stability through the spine. Our hips are going to be loaded, knees and ankles. That is a great exercise for exerting force through the entire kinetic chain, which is what we need when we're trying to build this KO power. Because if we're just generating force through our upper body and through our shoulder, there's not much there. Even if we've got good pushing strength, without core stability, there's not really anything there. And if we're just driving a bar overhead, again, we're just using the upper body. Whereas a punch, as we know, is transferred through the ground, through the hips, and then through the upper body. So, pull-ups, another key exercise. Now they're going to work your biceps, your posterior delt, and your lats. Now the lats are a huge muscle that encompasses most of the back. Now, when we're talking about, having stability overhead, what we're really talking about is stability through the shoulder. We want this because we've got to absorb a lot of impact when we land that punch. So with a pull-up, you're getting a lot of stability through the posterior section of the deltoid, and then latissimus dorsi muscles are going to be huge stabilizers and essentially shock absorbers, because there's going to be a lot of force going through that shoulder when a punch is landed. Building on from that, stability of the shoulder and protection of the shoulder ultimately, we want to do some rotator cuff exercises. So with that, we want to use, you often see it with the resistance bands, so a bit of internal and external rotation, things like that, getting the rotator cuffs stable and secure so that the shoulder again is going to be stable when landing a punch. So them exercises are pretty common now, rotator cuff exercises, and the importance of them is now becoming recognised. When we're doing the exercises, we need to consider if we're just doing concentric only exercises, because obviously the eccentric portion of the exercise is where you get more muscle breakdown. We may not necessarily want that. Concentric only exercises can also help with power and rate of force development. So that's another thing that we need to take over. Are we actually building power and rate of force development, etc., rather than muscular hypertrophy? Again, it goes back to that concentric and eccentric phase of movement. Plyometrics, brilliant tool for building power, and also things that are a bit more advanced like contrast training, post-activation potentiation. These sort of things are very advanced but very effective. Most importantly is technique. When it comes down to it, who has a stronger punch, a boxer or a bodybuilder or even a power lifter? The boxer does, because it's technique. Okay, they know how to move their body, they know how to put force through their body and into a punch. Technique will always trump anything you can do in the weight room. As Conor McGregor said, precision beats power and timing beats speed. That is the be all and an end all. It's all about technique and how you can use your body. Then you can start to build power and develop force through the use of resistance training. Hopefully you learned something from that. It was supposed to be a bit clearer than it was, but hopefully you got something from it. Give it a like and a share if you did get any benefit from it. Really appreciate it. Cheers.